With us now, two people who have interviewed most of the candidates for governor with truly different perspectives. With us first is Lucy Nalpathanchil. She is with WNPR, the host of Where We Live. And Ryan Anastasio is host of Raving Ryan, which is on YouTube and your website. So great to have both of you here because you've spent a decent amount of time with the candidates. And I know, Lucy, you had all four who were on the ballot, with the all five, with the exception of Bob Stefanowski, who canceled at the last moment. So let's begin with that. How did your listeners react to that cancellation?
They weren't happy. I mean, one of the things that Where We Live, which is the show that I host on WNPR, Connecticut Public Radio, we have these opportunities to have long-form interviews with the candidates where listeners are calling in real time and asking the candidate a question. We're even going on Facebook Live and taking some of those viewer comments to pose the questions that potential voters have for their candidates. And many of them were looking forward to asking a question of Bob Stefanowski. It was strange how we found out. He was confirmed, and then we just ended up not being on his schedule when a producer inquired. They said they were doing too many radio interviews, and so they had declined to come on. So it was disappointing for our listeners. And the fact that we have more than 800,000 unaffiliated voters in the state, some of them listen to WNPR, some of them may be watching today. They want to hear more from this GOP candidate, and unfortunately they didn't get the opportunity.
And it was recent too, just in the last week and a half or so, correct? And Ryan, you did get Mr. Stefanowski to come in. Tell us about that. When did it happen?
Yeah, so I interviewed Bob Stefanowski in June.
So it was early on. Okay.
Yes, it was before the primary. I interviewed all the Republican candidates, all five of them, as well as Ned Lamont. And from that impression, I wasn't sure where the race was going to go. So at that point, he was just in the five-way primary. I haven't got the chance to speak to him in the general election yet. And
Ryan, just to for our viewers' benefit, you're 15 years old, correct?
16.
16.
Now.
Oh, you're now 16.
Yeah.
Of course, when you started this, you were 15, and you launched this YouTube channel, and they all came in. All the politicians came in, correct?
Yeah, it's been a great experience. Just always wanted to get involved in politics and journalism some way, so I decided to do this. And Themis Claridis was my first interview, who was just on the show.
Interesting, interesting. Lucy, you had, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, all of the candidates who were on the ballot. Right. What was the most enlightening interview of all five of them? I know I listened to all of them, but Rod Hanscom, Libertarian candidate, you went back and forth with him a little bit.
We did. Again, Rod Hanscom and Mark Stewart Greenstein are often considered the fringe candidates. So Rod running on the Libertarian line, I think the first time the Libertarians have had someone on statewide ballot in about 20 years. And then Mark Stewart Greenstein, who has his own party, the Americans for Minimal Government Constitution Party that he created.
The Amigo Party.
The Amigo Party, that's right, for short. And we felt it was important to have both of them on because their names are on the ballot. Voters should know who they are and where they stand. And Rod, at times, with some of the questions that came in from our listeners, he was a little combative. He didn't want to answer a question about how he would appeal to Black and Hispanic voters. And Mark, often his platform, it sounded more libertarian, but one of the big points is he wants to bring the Whalers back, which, maybe there are hockey fans still in the state of Connecticut, but they want to hear more substantive issues.
We didn't have them on because in polling they didn't meet our criteria to be in our debates. We declined to have them on. But now, Ryan, did you ask any questions that made these guys squirm at all, and they didn't want to answer it?
Yeah, well, one question, I asked Ned Lamont about, he wants to legalize marijuana, and I asked him about that. And I asked him if they think we need a roadside test for that. And he wasn't really sure how to answer that. He stumbled a little bit, but then he eventually said he thinks we should legalize it, and we should probably have a roadside test by the time that we get to that. Bob Stefanowski, not much stumbling in that interview. What's really interesting in my interview is I do a lot of policy questions, but at the end I'll ask them a few personal questions. So it was great to get to see what some of their interests are, some of their favorite sports teams, where they like to get their favorite pizza restaurants.
Sometimes the personal questions or the lightning round at the end of a debate, they can really give you a sense of who these people are. Lucy, what was the most interesting thing you learned from all the candidates in terms of what something you didn't know before?
That's a hard one because I felt like with Ned Lamont, he often sticks to the same talking points. Oz Griebel, he's definitely engaged. He has the charisma. You can see why there are voters who are potentially thinking that they want to cast a ballot for him. But his biggest challenge, of course, is does he have name recognition outside the greater Hartford area? But in terms of something that I'd learned that I didn't know from the people getting most attention, not so much. I mean, obviously, Mark Stewart Greenstein and Rod Hanscom are two names most viewers probably aren't familiar with. So just hearing where they stand on particular issues was interesting. Mark Stewart wants to repeal the income tax, I believe, in 3 years, which we're hearing how even Stefanowski's claim to try to do it in 8 years is pretty far-fetched. How can you do it really in 3?
And your guests all come in person, correct?
Yes.
Because you do need that eye contact with them, and the same with you as well, Ryan. Have you ever been turned down for an interview?
Yes, I've been turned down many times. In the state, it was difficult for me to get some of the members of Congress on my show. But on the federal level, I've tried to get the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, on my show.
Come in person?
Yeah, I offered to go down to Washington, but I haven't been able to do that. And hopefully, looking forward to doing that.
You know, Lucy, historically speaking, I know Bob Stefanowski decided not to come on Where We Live. Over the years, has just pretty much every candidate come on?
Every candidate takes that opportunity to get as much access as possible. So it was surprising for us that he did not want to come on the show to talk to public radio listeners, who, by the way, are not just liberal voters. We have Republicans that listen to the station.
Absolutely.
We have many unaffiliated. Again, it's an opportunity to really ask questions that people may have, but to really engage with voters on the other side.
What did you find in terms of, did they avoid certain questions, Lamont and Griebel? We'll focus on those two for a moment.
I think Oz Griebel, he was very assertive. I think he knows because he doesn't have as much name recognition that he really has to take every opportunity that he can get. As far as Ned, the first time we spoke with him was before the primary in July, and he seemed a little off his game, so to speak. The last week when he was on, much closer, the polls are showing that he is with Bob Stefanowski, so I felt like he was definitely more aggressive, and we actually asked him, is Oz going to be a threat to his campaign? And Ned Lamont said that he will take away some votes. He also, interestingly enough, we asked, would he ask Oz to step aside because of how close this race is? And he said that's a question for Oz to decide, but he could maybe make room for him in his administration.
We thank you so much for being with us today. Ryan Anastasio and Lucy Nalpathanchil from WNPR. And of course, you can listen to all of Lucy's interviews with the candidates. I recommend you do because they're pretty in-depth on your website, WNPR.org.
That's right.
Correct? And your website is?
RavingRyan.com.
Check them out. All right. We thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you.